Thanks, Mike. For those of you who are here today, that were here yesterday, I don't need to cover toothpicks again, but if somebody wasn't here yesterday, y'all can tell them the story, okay? Now, there's one point of clarification I have to give you. Clay introduced me yesterday, and if you remember, Clay Spencer said, I'm the one that's responsible for getting Ernie out of the closet. And then he kept going. He said that to one of my good friends from Tennessee who's in Georgia this past May. And he said, I got Ernie out of the closet. And the guy said, I thought he was married and had 2 kids. And then this year, he has run me ragged. I'm telling you, I haven't had time to turn around or catch my breath. And I wasn't looking for anywhere to go demonstrate. I don't sell anything. I was happy up there on a hill in the middle of a pine thicket by myself. And I haven't had time to even catch my breath this year. And Clay called about 3 months ago, and it was at night, and I think I was outside doing something, maybe chasing possums or trying to find cats or whatever. And my wife Mary answered the phone, and Clay said, hey Mary, how you doing? Fine. And he said, well, I'm looking for Ernie, and well, he's outside. And he said, well, tell him to call me later on. And he said, by the way, does he cuss me every night for me running him up and down the road and all over the country? And she said, no, not every night. We've got a lot to cover, and I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time, but I have to tell you, I have to mention something else. Or ask a question. It was asked of me, and I'll ask it of you. What is the best piece of metalwork you have ever done? It is a trick question. Well, somebody asked that, I thought. Well, all I can say is the next one. And there's a hazard in looking back. Yeah, I feel good about what I did, but I've already done that. I need to go to some new adventure, something different. And so the best piece of ironwork I will ever do will be the next one. But I need to caution you about trying to feel good about, something I did 10 years ago. That was 10 years ago, that's not now. So don't look backwards. You remember what happened to Lot's wife when they were fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah, and God said, you get out of there, don't you look back, And she kept thinking, my little mud hut with 2 windows in it, my little dirt floor and my little clay oven, and I did have a bed in there. And all the people back there, and he said, get out of here, come on, run. And they were running up that hill, just getting out of there. And Lot's wife looked back, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Well, last year, Mary, my wife, was driving in downtown Jackson. She looked back and turned into a phone pole. We have to talk about tools and tooling. I didn't cover those yesterday. I ran out of time, so we're going to do it today, this morning, real quick. Chasing and repoussé tools, you're going to develop those in incremental sizes. They're all generic. 1/8 inch, 3/16, 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2. And you can work on material from the size of a 50-cent piece to a 4x8 sheet. Whether it's 18 gauge, 16 gauge, 10 gauge, it doesn't matter. These tools are all generic, and you can do fantastic work with these tools. And a lot of them, most of them, at least this part is in that box. Then you have categories of these tools. You have straight chisels, curved chisels, first and second pass butchers, flatters, ball tools, fullers, teardrop tools, and then I've got a lot of other special tools that I've developed for only one project, and I've never used them again, but I don't go back and modify them because I might need them. I've screwed up before trying to modify tongs for another operation, and then the next thing I did, I needed the ones I modified. I needed to go back. So all of them are developed out of S7 tool steel, and the straight chisels, I'll show you how to do that this morning. That's pretty straightforward. By the way, let me mention one other thing. On this table, I'm just going back just a little bit to revisit something. Everything on these two tables I have done with the exception of one piece. And that's this right here. This is one of the few times I will be serious in a presentation. There's not enough money in this room or in this city or in this state, singularly or collectively, to buy this.
I've got your hip boots on.
The reason why it has a stamp on the back that says CS, Clay Spencer. Clay Spencer, in all seriousness, and I won't be serious the rest of the day, but he is one of the modern day American icons of blacksmithing in the whole U.S. He has done at least as much, if not more, to promote blacksmithing nationwide than anyone I know of. And he's worked at it, he's traveled all over this country. And therefore, until I'm dead, this is off the market. You can't buy it. There's not enough money to buy this from me. It'll stay in my collection from now on. So I wanted to mention that about Clay, and I really admire everything he has done in the past, even though he did ask me if I cussed him out every night. And, all right, tools and tooling. Straight chisels are really pretty easy to do. Almost everything I use, basically everything I use is S7. It's a very forgiving steel. It's a tool steel. Some people air harden it. I don't. I do it a very unorthodox way. Listen, I go through this thing about heat treating for dummies. I don't really want to know anything about crystal structure. I really don't want to know what it does. I just want to use it. And when I make a tool, I don't have time to wait 3 hours, stick it in a toaster oven or in my wife's oven. One day I was trying some of this stuff and she was going to cook dinner and she said, "What's all this crap in the oven?" This is all this, and so I was run out of the kitchen with this stuff, and so I said, I've got to find some kind of, I learned how to do it a different way. You won't find it in any books. And so without talking a whole lot further, I've got to hush and work and try to, I'm ready for a fire. Most of them are, we'll just heat up one end. Most of these are, I start off with 4 1/4 inches, and everything is designed for work under a treadle hammer. Although I do hand hold some of these tools when I may be out on the vise, it's all interchangeable. Why 4 or 4 1/2 inches? Well, I can work under the hammer, and instead of totally vertical all the time, I can cant that tool one way or the other. The shorter the tool is, the easier it is to tilt it one direction or another. If you got a longer tool, you try to move it, it's going to kick out of the way. The tools are not hard to make. They're really easy to make. As soon as I get done with this, I'm just going to show you how to make a straight chisel. Then we're going to go to a curved chisel. Those are probably some of the hardest ones to make. I do have a belt sander at the house, something I got from Enco for, I don't know, $100. And you don't need anything elaborate. Just a little bitty belt grinder to shape the ends. When S7 cools off, quit hitting it. I mean, when mild steel cools off, quit hitting it. You're wasting time and energy. And now, but this is something you don't want to. You hear people, well, you need to come out of the fire with the metal dripping. No, you don't do that with tool steel. And S7 is extremely economical. You can use W1 for a lot of these tools, but if you've got a cutting tool, like a straight chisel or a curved chisel, W1 does not hold up, or that's been my experience. And I think most of you have made straight chisels before, or something thereabouts. Mark made one yesterday, and basically, where's the camera? Basically, that's it. And now I need to do a little bit of finish grinding. You see the end of the chisel on straight chisels. Let me mention this. Yes.
When you air cool the S7,
I don't air cool it.
what do you put?
I'm going to show you. And all of you who are metallurgists, your chin's going to hit the floor, your bottom lip's going to get full of gravel, and you're going to say, and look, remember, I'm doing heat treating for dummies, and it works. It absolutely works. Okay, side view. The shape here of a straight chisel looks like it looks like a canoe, okay? You don't have sharp corners, none at all. You take this off. Right here, no sharp corners. you've got a very gentle bevel on the sides of the tool. And the way this operates is that if you're moving in this direction, this tool is held up straight, and then as you hit, you drag the tool over here, and you never pick the tool up. All you're doing is hitting and moving like this. Don't pick it up. And you're following lines like I showed you yesterday. You just keep moving, don't pick it up. The leading edge, if you're going in this direction, the leading edge cuts, the trailing edge planishes. If you want to try to make a cut in a piece of sheet metal, and sometimes bar stock, you may have the tendency to use a bandsaw, but a bandsaw makes a cut like this in your metal, and then sometimes you start getting little fissures and little cracks. You don't ever get that with these chisels. In a lot of cases, I can really outcut a bandsaw, and I have smoother cuts, a lot better cuts, and even on some of this material, if I can find something real quick. Well, I'll look for that in a minute. You'll get some little scallop marks on the edge, and it adds a really nice effect. It's a real pretty effect. Okay, we've got the tool here, and I would go in now and do some grinding and final shaping on this tip and get it exactly the way I want it. But it doesn't require much. And I do that now, but instead of wasting time, I'll show you how to heat treat it. We can go back and grind it after it's heat treated. We'll put it in the auction tonight. And but there's no need in trying to do that at this point. You can heat the whole thing up to a probably a bright red. I am told that is close to 1700 degrees. I don't know that for a fact. I don't really care. I just look at color. That's all I do. Remember, we're going to go through a heat treating cycle right now. I'm sorry to offend everybody that is a metallurgist, because I'm not going to do it the way you know how to do it. I don't have time to wait 3 hours on a tool. I don't have time to do. When I need it in 10 minutes. And when I'm focused on doing a project, I really want to get that out of the way and just go, okay? While that's heating up, let's do it real slow. It needs to be a slow heat, very slow heat. We'll just put the whole tool on top of the fire, and or cut the blast down. Slow heat, slow rise.
I need it right now to do it slow.
Huh?
I need it right now. I've only got 10 minutes to do it slow.
That's right, but I can do a tool in 10 minutes, okay? 5 minutes to shape it, and 5 minutes to heat it up to where I want it, and then finish the heat treatment. So 10 minutes per tool is not too bad compared to 3 hours. And I don't have.
Do you use a half-inch stock for all your tools?
No, I use 1/2 and 3/8. Right, and that's basically what I use for all the tools. And remember, incremental sizes. Did y'all have questions about any of that? This was all generic. It is in, go ahead. Yeah.
of the same
Yeah.
thickness of rod every time?
The reason you don't go below 3/8 is because you put these tools under extreme stress on that treadle hammer. And air cooling S7, an S7 air cooled tool will absolutely not hold up under a treadle hammer. It'll wind up doing this. It'll do it. Air cooling, you may get to a Rockwell 57, 56. You got it. This way, I'm gonna get a Rockwell 63 or 64 out of this. And it will be a tougher piece. Okay, it'll be a tougher piece than anything you'll heat treat in an oven. Okay, all right guys, watch closely. This is a very complicated process. That's water, it's not oil. Everything but the last 1/2 inch of the tube. For S7, that's a complete heat treatment. Sorry guys, that's it. That's as complicated as it gets. You notice the last 1/2 inch I did not put in water. Why? That's air cool. It's going to be air cool. Why didn't I dunk the whole piece?
Still won't get as hard as a piece of oil.
Hammerhead hard.
You didn't want the
It's-
tonic to get wet.
But okay, well look, it's tool steel. Why don't I stick the whole thing down? Now remember, this is air hardening tool steel.
It'll
So
harden, but not as much as what you quenched.
that's right. What you want when you, that's it, that's finished. This is what you want to happen on all these tools. See if you can catch this. Get real close on that end. You see that mushroom on the end of the tool? That's what you want it to do. And that's air hardened tool steel, S7. It's not hard enough for this kind of work. You can heat treat the sucker for 3 hours, and this tool is still harder than anything you can heat treat in an oven for 3 hours. I'll pass this around. I've had this tool for probably 17 or 18 years. Only thing I've ever done was polish the end. You don't want sanding scratches in this. You want it highly polished. Number one, that reduces or that increases rust resistance, and it also gives you less resistance when you're working in metal. A highly polished tool. Everything in that box has got a good polish on the end of it. You want to pass it around? Everything else in the box looks like that. Questions? Straight chisel. Heat treatment for dummies.
What makes you decide, is it the finished tip between 1/2 inch and 3/8 stop? What makes you choose 3/8 over 1/2 inch or vice versa?
All right, it's just a matter of the size of the tool that, for example, let me pick out another one. That's 3/8. That's a much, much smaller blade, okay? Pass this around too, that'll show you the difference between 1/2 inch and 3/8. Why would you want to go to a smaller width blade on a straight chisel? You're right, you're right. I had a piece of chalk somewhere. Ah, here it is. 1/2 inch chisel, cutting a radius like that, no big deal, no problem. A 1/2 inch width, cutting that, you ain't gonna do it. You're gonna have your chisel, if it's a 1/2 inch chisel, it's gonna be doing this. this is one time you really don't want to color outside the lines. So you go to a more narrow width, okay? That's it, and that's what this range 1/8 through 1/2 gives you the ability to go through different size curves. A lot of it's straight work. Any question about straight chisels? Okay, curved chisels. Let me show you that real quick because I'm really not. Wanting to take up your time a whole lot because we've still got to go.
Do you only use your curved chisels on real fine curved work, or do you use it on larger curved items? Or do you only use a straight chisel?
Let,
How big a curve do you, small curve can you still use your straight chisel?
remember we talked about fleur-de-lis last night? This is another modified fleur-de-lis. You see the inside curve? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You see the inside curve right here? Can you get that?
Yep, you're good.
All right here. How can you think you can cut that with a 1/8 inch chisel in a perfect curve? You can't do it. You cannot do it with a straight chisel.
Was it George Dixon that told you that?
George Dixon told me that, and then I proved it to myself. Pass that around and look at the curve, okay? George and I are good friends, and I learned a lot from George. And I really bothered him a whole lot, but I was desperate for information. And that's the only place I knew of to go. And I will tell you this, George is kind of cranky sometimes, but he and I got to be real good friends, and I know this is going to come out wrong, and just take it the way it comes out. I don't mean anything negative, but if I can learn something from a donkey, I will listen to him. Somebody, well, are you calling George? No, I'm not. I'm giving you an illustration. George probably has forgotten 100 times more than I will ever know, because he did work in Yellen's shop. And I tried to pick his brain every way I could. And we talked a lot about design. We talked a lot about what these guys thought and the thought process they went through. I was desperate for information. I was desperate. And I didn't know of anybody else I could go to. And George knew that. And so he would humor me and take up time with me. And that's what all of us should be doing with anybody else who wants to know how to do something. But he was really nice, very novel guy. And George's mannerisms never bothered me one bit. I liked the guy. And so now, let me go to something else. Okay, a curved chisel. It doesn't matter whether it's 1/2 inch or 3/8, doesn't matter. But you're gonna make them in these incremental sizes. And the size that you make depends on the file you use. If you want a 1/2 inch rat tail file, a 3/8 rat tail file, or a chainsaw file, and I have made some down to a round needle file size. That's a tiny, tiny curve. Why in the world you do it with a file? Why don't you just do it in a swage with a piece on top and get your curve? Why not?
Control. Precision.
Precision. A curved chisel made with this file will track a perfect circle. It's the only way to get it. What you do, and I know that y'all know all of this, but so I can refresh my memory. All you're gonna do sometimes is put this, whatever size stock you're using. Now look, I've already been warned about this, and I did catch myself on fire one time. I was grinding, I had on a t-shirt, and I was really getting after it, and then I smelled smoke. I said, that doesn't smell right. And still walking around the shop, and I said, that's getting stronger. Where's that smoke coming from? My stomach's hot. And I looked down, and my entire t-shirt was on fire. So, you know, if I catch myself on fire, please let me know. But all you're going to do is take this file. If you want to, you can take a triangular file and put a nick to start your cut instead of this kind of rolling around. Just take a triangular file, start a nick, and then you're going to take it, and this is kind of boring and kind of slow, but I've already done it, okay? I did it last night, so y'all wouldn't have to watch all this today. Once you file that curve, you're going to go back on the back side of this, and you're going to take a grinder or a belt sander, and you want a bevel on the back. Y'all realize my conscience is sitting here. You get that? Just see that bevel on the back? All right, now look at the corners of that chisel. They're not square. Why? I don't want it gouging, so I take the corners off. They're rolled, all right? I can put this tool down. You see the bevel. The bevel is going to be in really close proximity to the bevel on a straight chisel. Therefore, if I've got a straight line that moves into a really tight circle, that bevel that the straight chisel created will match the bevel on this curved chisel, okay, when it picks up. If you...
Do you file it to half the depth of the tool?
I try to go at least half the depth of the tool that I'm working on.
How long of a taper do you want to file in?
I don't want a short taper. Probably anywhere from a half inch to an inch sometimes. You can get by on this 3/8 with a half inch taper on it. The reason why is the longer the taper is on it, the more times I can dress the tool should I get a nick or something happens to that tool, and I can go back and regrind it, and I've still got a lot of taper. Generally, that happens very seldom with S7. There are tools in here that I've had for 15 years that I've used a lot of, and the only thing I've ever done is put them back on a buffing wheel with rouge to polish them. I've never had to redress them on a belt sander. S7's great. I enjoy it, and like I said, from my perspective, it's heat treating for dummies. And I don't mind telling you, I don't really want to learn a whole lot about heat treating. I really don't. I mean, that's not my interest, and I'd rather do work with a tool than understand. I've got a good friend that he can talk all day long about crystalline structure and molecular combinations of all that, but and he really, we'll just lay it on top and just bring it on up. But we're going to heat treat this the same way. Yes, sir.
How do you polish the inside of your curve?
Buffing wheel. I know that's going to have some scratches on it, but I can't get those out. I've tried, but really the main part of the cutting part of that curved chisel is going to be the edge and the back, and so the inside doesn't really make that much difference in what it looks like. I'd love to get all the scratches out, because down there in Mississippi with the humidity we got, any kind of inclusions that you have, if it's a sanding scratch, that's where water's going to collect and your tool's going to rust. That box generally stays full of camphor. You know, you buy it in little blocks, you can get it at the grocery store. And as that evaporates, it imparts a fine, fine, oily film on all the tools in that box. And that's about the only way I can keep rust off of tools down there, just because of that humid condition. Do y'all have questions, any more questions about straight chisels, curved chisels?
Not about the chisels, but the material. Do you buy that 1/2 inch and 3/8 S7 from McMaster Car?
No, not from McMaster Car. I found a place, and maybe Clay can help me out, in Tennessee, Ron Nichols. Do you remember the name of that place?
The only name I remember is Ron Nichols.
All right.
Ron gets it, I get it.
Ron found a place, Ron Nichols, up close to Nashville. It's the best price on, if you get S7, get decarb free S7. And it's not perfectly uniform like you would, you don't need it for this, and you're saving money. But it's decarb free S7, just cut the blast off if we got color. Remember, we're bringing this up slow, and if you quench this above that higher medium to high red heat, if you quench it above that, you're going to get a stress crack. You're going to get a stress crack every time. So one thing that helps with that is bringing the tool up gradually on heat, and don't take it above a bright red. Whatever temperature that is, and I have no idea.
The S7 you say is carbon free or?
Decarb, D-E-C-A-R-B, decarb free. Okay,
They grind off the surface.
here you go.
Decarb is
Right.
the process.
Hold your breath. You want to move that tool around in the water. It will create. You want to cool it fast, and once it gets a vapor around it, you want to get rid of that in the water, and so you want to get this thing cooled off, and that is how you do that.
You said you didn't know the name of the supplier.
I don't.
Where is it located?
Just outside of Nashville.
Most any tool steel supplier, you can get the S7 decarb free from.
Yeah. It's just that supplier seems to be a lot cheaper than others I've seen. McMaster Car has it. You've got all kinds of tool steel companies everywhere that have this, but
I think Enco has it.
yeah, Enco's got it. You can buy it in, I think, 2-foot sticks or.
Several places, Ford Steel
Yeah.
in St. Louis.
If y'all want to do this, what I'd suggest, how many of you want to do this kind of stuff? Y'all get together and buy 12-foot lengths of this stuff and have it shipped. If 10 of you want tool steel, that's the way to go. That's the way to get it. Or you know, and well, you can wind up with a whole lot of tools. I've still got about half that amount still left in my shop that I don't bring. But sorry guys, that's heat treating for dummies. And it works. You won't find it in any specs anywhere. It flies in the face of everything you've ever heard about heat treating S7. But if you think it does not work and I don't know what I'm talking about, then this is done with these tools. All of this work right here. I have never had a tool failure. I've had a little crack because I got it too hot, but I went on and used the tool anyway to see if it'd work, and it's held up just fine. We'll put these in the auction tonight. Any more questions about tools?
Ernie, how do you forge a teardrop?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I've got some more stock. I'm just trying to figure out where it is. And it should be in that box, maybe. How about that? Okay, teardrop tools. And I use a lot of those. If you were here yesterday, you saw. If you were here yesterday, just the end of it.
On top of the box.
Wait a minute. Yeah, that's ½ inch. Just leave it in there and don't get the end of the tongs hot. Bring it up, well, you can bring that one up pretty fast. But teardrops, if you were here yesterday, you saw this little animal formed with curved teardrops. Now this is bronze, and a guy gave me a piece of it. In fact, Dixon gave me a piece of it, and he said, try it out. Well, have y'all worked with bronze much? The heat range on mild steel may be like this. Heat range on bronze is right here. You get it too hot, it puddles up on the floor. If you work it too cold, that sucker cracks. But in between those two things, it's like butter. It's almost like wrought iron. But oh, okay. That's the effect of some of the curve.
Camera behind you is trying to film. You're on fire. We did get
Yeah. But that's the effect of those teardrops, and you can make them curved, you can make them straight, you can make them flat, they can have bellies. And if you look in this box, I don't know if you want to, do I need to pass those out?
Might help, yeah.
If you're making curved teardrops, if you're making curved teardrops, you have to have a right and left. They have to be mirror images, exact mirror images of each other. But if you're just dealing with straight teardrops, that's no big deal. I'm sorry, guys. I can't be more complicated than this. This is a teardrop. You grind it off straight, or you grind it off straight and put whatever curve you want in it. You want my butter? Which way? All right. Can you get it? All right. You can see the shape of the end. It's in a wedge shape. Can y'all see that? That's all it is. That's all that you do to shape a teardrop. You go back and you either take a grinder or a belt sander, and you do your final shaping. You generally want it, you want a right angle between the working surface and the shaft. And if you want it curved, you go ahead and shape this. And this is not critical because you're not trying to cut a perfect circle. But you take that and you see another piece of round, well, doesn't matter. Put in a swage block, 1/2 inch, 3/8, 5/8, whatever you're dealing with. Put it in a swage, get a matching top round piece, heat it up, and go boom. Well, you got a curve. You got a nice curve. Just remember when you're making a mirror image, what you're trying to do and which way you want. You're going to have to hold the tool this way at one point and this way at another point to get your mirror image. Y'all want this heat treated? Go ahead and heat treat it. We'll just.
Yeah, I'm not sure I
Ernie, do we have time for that?
Oh yeah. At this point, it is, but when I get done, there won't be any at all. Scale is generally not my friend, nor was it a friend of all the European Smiths, nor was it a friend in Yellen's shop. Those who were at the little presentation last night saw perfect examples that scale was not our friend and some of the finest metalwork I've ever seen. So you know. No, the only time I deal with scale generally is if it's 1 inch long, 4 inches long, there's nothing up here on the table that's got scale on it. Another thing I want to tell you, and we're going to get to this in a minute, but I thought I'd tell you just before I forget. I had a 1 inch round swage at home. And I was trying to work on pieces that had a taper, okay? But when I would get it in that 1 inch round swage and work on it, it would do this. And I just didn't, and so I called Clay one day. And I'm not like Clay. Clay can make anything on earth, but I didn't think I could do that. So I said, can you do it? He said, yeah, send a drawing to me. Are you ready? You getting close?
No.
All right, just let me know when you're ready. So he said, send a drawing, tell me what you want. So I sent him a drawing, and believe it or not, 4 days later, this came back in the mail. 4 days later from Mississippi to Alabama. I mean, that was fast, turnaround. And I called Clay up and I said, that's exactly what I need. How much do I owe you? You don't owe me anything. I said, no, it ain't gonna work like that. I know you spent time on this, and all right, heat treating one more time. Y'all should know how to do this by now, okay? Any questions about heat treating for dummies? Okay, guys, that's it. That's,
Ernie,
yes.
on your first and second pass butchers, how sharp an edge do you want on the leading edge? Do you want a little bit of radius on it?
I want just a hair.
Just a little.
I don't want it cutting like a knife blade right there, even though it's blunt. I want the leading edge just slightly rounded. Because all I'm doing with a butcher is shaping the metal. I don't want to cut the metal, okay? I don't know if that makes sense. But back to this tool. I called him and I said, what do I owe you? He said, nothing. I said, Clay, that's not gonna work. I'm gonna pay you whatever time you got, whatever, how much steel cost. And he kept going on and on about that. I said, well, I've got to do something. This is not acceptable. I am not going to do that. He said, well, in your spare time, sometime, why don't you, if you have time, why don't you do a gap gauge? This is the first one that I did. The one that I did for clay has much more profuse detail in it.
What kind
All
of
right.
detail?
Profuse. I mean it. That there was a lot of teardrop work in here. There was a lot more veining. I mean it, and it was deeper cut. I mean, it was a nice piece, a lot nicer than this one. Now, okay, by weight, this is much more valuable. How much time did it take you to make this?
Well, I had to make a taper thing first.
Yeah.
Actually, to make that, it took a couple of heats.
A couple of, what amount of time is involved?
Well, that's an hour.
Hour.
But it took me a couple of hours or more to make the other piece to make that shape.
Okay, 3 hours. Compared to 16. This is more valuable.
More valuable.
This is more valuable by weight. This is more valuable by time. So I have learned since then to not ask Clay, how much do I owe you? I'm not gonna. I caught myself one day, he had these photographs of Yellings, and we were trying to make duplicates, and I said, well, Clay, for making these duplicates and all that, how much do I know? I'm not asking that question anymore. So you gotta watch him like a hawk. All right, let's go on.
Ernie?
Yes.
Before you move on from tools, would you talk a little bit about matting tools and how you make them and how you use them in your work?
Matting tools. I think I may have told y'all yesterday, this is the first piece that I ever did with repoussé, chasing, and making these tools. I'd done a little bit of leather work, so I kind of knew a little bit, just a tad about what they did. Matting tools that have surface texture, what you're trying to do is make the background, if the background is dark, it will recede, okay? And this is where you can take advantage of a little bit of scale, Scott. If this back surface is chewed up a little bit, then there's no way to get all the scale off. And that's good because it's dark and it will make that background recede. Anything that's positive formation will begin to move towards you visually, okay? All right, sorry. So this is what you wind up with. This is the first piece that I ever did with any of these tools without any instructions. Nobody told me what to do. I just got in there and grunted out and tried to do it. I did all of this hot under a treadle hammer. I think I did it in 95.
Don't wiggle.
How do you make the matting tools? You want to pass those around you got in your box?
Yeah.
How do you make them?
Yeah, I'll do that. Do what?
How do you make the matting do?
Okay, I'm going to tell you real quick. It's an extremely, there's one that's different than most. This one right here, the heavy matting, right there, that heavy matting, I took a file. Do you see that heavy crosshatch in there? I took a file and I cut that in. I cut it in with a file. Some of the other stuff other tools that you see, like this one, or this one, was done by heating it up and driving it into a file. Or you can take extremely rough sandpaper and do the same thing. But these are background texture tools. That's all they are. To make a background recede where the material will hold a little bit more scale because all you're doing is playing with light and shadow. That's what you're doing, light and shadow. And
So you have these tools in square and then some with a round back to get in the corner?
I have them in all kind of shapes and sizes.
To get in the corners.
Yeah, some I have to make in triangle shapes, some in steep wedge shapes, because I want to get in a lot of intricate places. One thing I will show you where scale does work to your advantage, and I don't want to remove it. And Yellen made a really good study of this, is the negative space in this candlestick is dark. That separates these leaves. That's the scale that remains. There's no way to get it out, and you don't want to get it out because you're playing with light and shadow, okay? Light and shadow. And you don't, some of this you don't want to really remove at all. Okay? Even this portion right here around the base, you've got the little round punch marks. You want them dark. That way they show up. Even the band that you file around here between elevations, you want that to be dark so it makes the band pop out. Okay, so you don't want to remove all the scale, but you want to remove the majority of it, where when you feel of it and you run your fingers across any of this, you don't feel that old rough, bumpy grind. You know, you want everything really kind of smooth and flowing and
Ernie, when you're doing representing in copper, you're using those matting tools, and you're doing it on pitch. The technique is to hold it like a jackhammer.
yeah.
And hold it that way, because if you drag it, you don't.
Well, I agree. And now, a confession, I have never worked with copper. And I know what you're talking about. You do have to pick up a matting tool. And you're going to have to move it where you want that texture, okay? But other than that, you know, and I make a whole big variety and then figure out later on what I need or what I don't need. And if I need something, I've got it. And depending on the application, there's no matting done on that candlestick, wherever that is floating around, but that's just scale on the interior.
Ernie, are these, maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, are these S7 also?
Yeah, yeah,
String too?
yeah. And if I'm gonna file notches in it, I've got to do it in an annealed state. Once you heat S7 up, you're not going. You can file it, but it take you a long time. You can. One thing Yellen used to do is like you make files. You can take a sharp chisel and you can chisel work into that. And while we're talking about that, I need to mention something else. Last night we talked about a lot of symbolism, and there's one thing we did not cover. You remember seeing those shields last night and the keys where you had a bow right here and you had some slash marks like that? Some of these shields, or the crest, go back at least to the 10th century, okay? Occasionally you would see one with a slash through it. Sometimes you would see one that was divided into four quadrants, and you may have a slash through one quadrant. You could have a slash through two quadrants. Okay? That was probably more normal than you would think. And when you get to, I talked about the dot and chevron, or the chevron designs that you would get here. That's still borrowed from that slash in the 10th century. Armies in Europe and different regions use the same motif on their sleeves, okay? But let me go back to the slash by itself. What did that mean when you had a slash through a crest, or through a shield on a crest, or on a coat of arms? The same thing happened in the 10th century and before as it happens today. The only people that could really afford family crest were nobility, people who were affluent, okay? But the same thing happened to those guys that happens today. This was a sign in that family of an illegitimate birth. They fooled around back then the same that they do today. When that illegitimate child came out, this was public knowledge, public consumption. They wanted everybody to know that guy did not get any part of the inheritance of that family. So this was for public consumption. You might have even a shield like this. Somebody really got busy. So, therefore,
What if the shield was a band, a wide band?
well, I don't know. I think you're really in trouble then. But anyway, the one we saw last night, even on a key, had 3 little stars on it. That was the same thing. Okay, I'm getting to a point, and I'm bringing something in the past to the present. All right, excuse my French, please, but there's no other way to say it than a bastard came out of this family. Illegitimate birth. True as it can be, I am not pulling your leg. It's part of history you need to know because it appears a lot in metalwork. I'm giving you background. Okay, let's bring it up to today. You still see this motif today. Tell me, who can see real well? Anybody can see real well? Tell me what the name of this file is.
Bastard.
It's a bastard file for public consumption because this file has slashes. That's where the name came from back in the 10th century. From family crest of nobility.
So if there are multiple lines, is that multiple children?
No, well, I don't know. Could be, but that is the origination of that name. Some of you who are as old as I am, they used to have cartoons on TV, and there was a little guy named Simon Bar Sinister. And he wore a little vest, and it had a slash mark across it. You're bringing all that forward to today. People don't know where that name originated. People have no earthly idea, but I can prove, and I have documentation to bring it forward to the present. This is where it came from. Okay? So when you use a bar or a slash in your motifs, now you know the history.
Be careful.
Huh?
Be careful with what it implies.
That's true, but at
Nobody
least,
knows what it means anyway.
well, at least you know now the history of it. And I can provide the documentation, should you need it. That wouldn't be a problem. Okay, what time have we got? We're doing pretty good, aren't we? Huh?
9 o'clock.
All right, let's go into fire with that.
You should have told me that.
Yeah, let me see. Here we go. Here you go. Yeah, I should have. Do you have any questions so far?
Actually, I was late to your presentation last night, and you were talking about the symbolism of chevrons. I didn't get that last night.
I don't really think I may have mentioned it. The chevron, like that, you see that, which appears on a bar like this. I'm a little bit hesitant to talk about it here. I can tell you all you want to know after the crowd leaves, but I mean, it's factual information. This appeared, they continued this at this like this. And a lot of times they added a dot in here on chevrons. But this also came from the 10th century. And many of the armies in Europe, you would see that on sleeves the same as you see today. I can probably finish that story after 12. Huh? Do what? Do it? All right. Y'all get in trouble, I don't get in trouble, okay? The chevron was a phallic symbol. You have male, and then you have female. If you take male and turn it over, it fits into the chalice. Okay? All right. Now, if this is a symbol for male, and I'm a private in the Army, I have one of these. Okay? If I am a corporal, I got two of them. If I'm a sergeant, I got three of these suckers. Back in the 10th century, 9th century, 10th century, 11th century, the more of those I had on my sleeve, that's what it symbolized. The more virile I was, I mean, I was way, way up there. I was a very popular guy everywhere. That's the meaning of all this back in the 10th century, okay? I can provide that documentation also should you need it. But you saw last night in a lot of those slides where the chevron was used abundantly throughout all of this metalwork. Even decorative effects that they used, different way. I'm sorry. Here's the dot and chevron here, okay? Then you have modified dot and chevron. The chevron appeared in a lot of different modified sequences, but now you know its origin and root back to the 10th century. And they used these modifications to profusely embellish metalwork.
Does a female private today have an inverted one?
It's been a long time since I was in the Army.
Did Francis Whitaker know about this?
I don't know how much research Francis had done on this.
He had the chevron around his touch.
He may have known. He really might have, because he did study in Europe. And that was common knowledge in Europe. It was just, I mean, this wasn't anything bad or dirty or anything. It's just common knowledge. And it's part of history, which is, you know, it's really not good or bad. It's just historical record, okay?
It is.
All right, yeah, go ahead and get both ends hot. Any questions so far? We're doing okay on time.
Is there a significance to the dot with the, in the sequence of chevrons?
To my knowledge, there's absolutely no significance to the dot other than adding interest. That's the only thing I know of. And I can't find any significance to the dot, but primarily the chevron pattern. You even saw some last night that was cut out and applied on top of a piece, just like that little gargoyle head we passed around, wherever it is. Where I'd had fleur-de-lis, a lot of times you'd see people do a dot and chevron on a layered piece that would be applied to make a frame.
Our family crest that has a double line across, just like the band.
Yeah?
Is that a band or is that for a bunch of basketball?
Probably family crest have metamorphosed and changed and all that through time. And so probably what it meant back then may not mean the same thing today. I'm giving you a way out. Hang on, just keep it hot. Just keep it hot. Hang on 1 second. When you see that, you know, that slash, I have a good friend who was making a lock and key for a client. Well, the client said, "How long will it take?" And he said, 6 weeks. Okay. Well, about a week later, the client called and said, "Well, you got it ready?" He said, "I told you 6 weeks." Well, then the client called the next week. He said, "Listen, I told you 6 weeks. I got 4 to go. I've got a couple other jobs to get out of the way, then I'll get to it." The last 2 weeks, he called him every 3 days. Well, so the guy, what he did, he had made a solid bow right here for the key, where your thumb and your forefinger went. It was solid. But he made some decorative embellishments. And he put slash marks on either side. So whenever that guy got that key and held it between his thumb and his forefinger, you know what my friend was calling him. You know, he's kind of sadistic, you know, like that. He did have one other client that was an avid basketball fan, and he was making a railing, interior railing. Had a lot of detail. Well, he got done, and they kept bugging him and bothering him a whole lot, and he just got tired of it. And all right, hang on, I've got to get this piece right here. And anyway, he got tired of being bugged on all that stuff. So he finally told the client when he delivered the product, he said, he said, I have chased in a basketball somewhere on this railing and it is your job to find it. Well, he just told him that. Some of the friends I have in metalwork are a tad weird, but they're fun to be around. A lot of them have a really dry sense of humor. Now, what I'm showing you with this, or going to show you, try to attempt to show you, is some of the architectural embellishments, or one type that Samuel Yellen used in a lot of his work. Let's go just a little hotter. And while we're doing that, I'll get up here on the board. Molding, a lot of molding. Either crown molding, molding around doors, entranceways. A lot of this was cast molding and plaster, or it could have been milled in wood, okay? One solution in metalwork is, forget about size right here. This is just illustration. It could be anything from 2 inches tall to 6 inches tall, doesn't really matter. But one solution, this is cast or carved. Here's one solution in metal. For molding, whatever size this is, this could be 2 inches tall, 8 inches tall, and corresponding, all of this was blind riveted to a back plate and to itself. So that gives you an idea. And Yellen used this a lot. He used it a tremendous amount. That's all right, I'll take it just like it is. I think now I'm going to have to let this cool off before I mark it. So we're going to go on to something else right now at this point. Okay. Probably, my honest opinion for me, this is for an interior window grill. Probably something that would cover a small window leading into a wine cellar or a smoking parlor or a bar room inside a $7 million house. It's probably, from my perspective, one of the prettiest pieces of grill work I've ever seen. I copied it, not because I did it. I'm sorry. I copied this out of a photograph and talking to George Dixon that I got out of Yellen's shop. Yellen had done it as a sample. I don't know that he ever actually used this, but it was a sample. And I said, gosh, that's some of the neatest grill work I've ever seen. I wonder if you can pass it around. I said, I wonder if I can do it. And sometimes you talk to Dixon and he says, no, I doubt it. You don't have the skill. Of course, he's messing with you. But, okay, how does it start out? One-8 inch by 1 inch flat bar. Let me pick it up over here. That's it. 1/8 by 1 inch flat bar. That's all it is, okay? Now, here's the layout. You have to pay really close attention because this is extremely complicated. You want them bigger? Then you go back here to 1/2, and then back to 3/4. Repetition. And that's the same, you repeat that same pattern throughout, laying this out on a bar. This is one time, you remember we talked about layout is king yesterday? Precision control was one of the hallmarks of the Gothic period as well as when it moved into the Renaissance period. As you pass that around, that is Gothic, tell me the country of origin.
Mississippi.
No. I do know that Mississippi is a country, but
They do speak a foreign language.
I speak deep south. It comes from eating too much grits, but country of origin. It was 16th century Gothic. See if you can tell me what the country of origin is.
Switzerland for the precision?
Huh?
Switzerland for the precision?
Nope. Nope. Y'all are guessing. All right, let me give you a hint. Look at the negative space. Let me see this. Look at the negative space and tell me what you see. This is the negative space. You're close. Spanish tile. Do you see Spanish tile right here? Country of origin is Spain, 16th century Gothic.
Ernie, will you let us look at that on the invoice? If you hold it on the invoice, we'll focus that.
Wayne's got to shift over.
16th century Spain, front, the rosettes. Now, I don't ever want to do another one of these. And quite honestly, I almost lost my mind doing rosettes, and they're really pretty and they're fun to look at, but I just don't want to do any more of them. To me, I get tired of doing the same thing over and over. The rosettes start out as 1/2 inch square, 18 gauge.
1/2 inch square? 1.5?
1.5 inch square, 18 gauge. This is the most efficient use of material I have ever seen in developing a very fine, detailed window grill. Well, Ernie, what do you mean? Well, what you have where you have loss of material in this entire grill work, this is the only loss of material you have. You see the dark areas? That's all that you cut away. That's it. Okay? Once you cut it away and start doing a little bit of work, all right, let me show you this. This is after a first pass. See that? Once you get your first pass done, then you do your butcher work, okay? You see these lines right here beside the veins, on either side of the veins? That's where your butcher work starts. Once you're butchered and you cut it out, cut out the waste product, this is what you wind up with, okay? You want to pass these around and take a look? Would that be of any benefit? And the rest of that will come around. Okay, remember precision. Layout in Gothic and Renaissance work is king. Symmetry demanded precision. I'm going to do this on a little Smith Magician, but remember, you have to have really good registration on this thing. So what I did in the very center, well, before that, before any of that, you may see these chisel marks that I put in the center. That's where I want the material to collapse. And a controlled collapse. Same thing that happens when you cut a large notch in a tree. Which way is it going to fall? It will fall toward the notch. There's no resistance. That's the same principle here. but you have a controlled collapse. But you still lack something else to get accuracy. I can't accurately heat this up and look at these lines and find out where I'm supposed to be under a Fuller or a Smithing Magician, okay? So, see if you can zero in on this. On the sides, I have filed some little notches. And the very center off, you see the notch right here? It's directly in the center of the collapse area.
You've done both sides or just the one side?
Just one side. This side's plain. Nothing on that side. Because I want the collapse going one direction, okay? And to show you how that works, I'll see if I can't get on this side where you can see a little better what I'm doing. These are register marks for these fullers. If you do not have them, you can't get this lined exactly the way you want it. It has to be exact, okay? We just had a controlled collapse, okay? We'll just do a couple more so you'll get an idea of what we're doing. This is the late Gothic period, so you're getting close to the Renaissance with this. See what we got. Got a little bit of a tad of a bend, but you just straighten that out. And I'll do one more. And for illustration, yeah, right in the center. That's where a torch comes in rather than put it, if I put it in there, I get a heat all the way down to the end. And I don't really need that. And remember, I just do this stuff to see if I can do it. You don't want to go all the way down to close up because it just doesn't look right.
So if I put the little groove in there, it forces the material to collapse on you.
it collapses toward the notch,
Okay.
just like a tree. And so you see the repetition. Now, these little guideline marks that I put in this right here, at this point, they've totally disappeared. Okay? Did you get this? That's the sequence.
You don't rock it?
Huh?
You don't rock the material when you come down? Keep it straight.
I keep the material straight. Halfway through, I will flip it over. And that's just sometimes you get a variation between a stable bottom and a moving top, and you get a little variation in there. So halfway through, I'll flip it. You've noticed I flip it over, and that helps me keep everything pretty close to even.
Ernie, what's the radius on those fullers at
Half inch, half inch, half inch.
Does it grow any in length when you do that?
Uh,
Have you made a test piece to know that
no, they don't grow.
don't grow?
It does not lengthen. And remember, this kind of stuff has got to be precise. I found out the hard way. I was a little bit sloppy in the beginning. And if you are a 1/16 of an inch off, or even a 32nd of an inch off in the layout of that 1 inch by 1/8 inch piece, what you're going to wind up with, instead of a really nice grid pattern like this, you're going to wind up with something that begins compound exaggeration, and you start winding up with something like this. It will compound on you, and then you will go out and stick that in your yard and call it modern art.
Would that be a summer sunrise?
That could be autumn sunrise right there. It very well could be. But then in that case, it becomes modern art. And then you go from having a shop to having a studio. Yeah. All right. I need the one that I've got totally cut out to show you that formation. Okay, hurry. No. Go ahead. If y'all look at it real quick. Very quickly. I have another bit of information that was requested yesterday. Why amber mica versus silver mica? What is mica? It's a mineral. Where is it mined?
It usually comes from pigmatites.
Huh?
Comes from pigmatites.
Where's that mined?
Well, I don't know, it's all over the place. Where you
Most of it comes from the western U.S.
probably there used to be
Yeah.
one in California.
Most of it comes from the western U.S. It's small, the flakes or the chips of mica are thinner than a piece of paper. I know about amber mica. Amber. Those small chips and flakes of that mineral are put in a roll or a press, and it's mixed with shellac. Shellac is made from the bodies of bugs in Africa. That's what gives it its odor and color. But it's the mastic that binds the mica slivers, minerals together, and it's rolled in a press at very, very high heat. That dries the shellac and bonds those minerals together. Silver mica is the same mineral, but I do not know the bonding agent for silver mica. I just don't know. Why amber versus silver? All right, a table lamp. All you're after is a silhouette right here. But what you really want is reflection back down. Amber mica is much less translucent than silver. And therefore you get more reflection back, which that's what you want on a table lamp. You don't want it so bright it hurts your eyes. You don't want to look at a light bulb. That's just not pleasant. These are two 60-watt bulbs in here, and you don't have any problem, even at night in a totally dark room, with glare from this because of the reflection off the mica back down. And what you're looking for is illumination down here anyway. Conversely, that lantern hangs over my dining room table. And had it not been for clay, it would still have always hung over my dining room table instead of traveling all over.
Say thanks.
Yeah.
Left your wife in the dark?
Huh?
You've left your wife in the dark?
Well, no. Well, yeah, I guess I have. And when I take them out, she says, it really looks vacant in here. But why silver? This has a 25-watt bulb in it, hanging over a dining room table. It's a linear bulb about this long. Well, what you're doing, if you turn out all the lights in that room and you light this up, guess what happens? Gothic comes alive, a really romantic period. And you put a couple of roses out there and you cook supper, and she just says, I really know you love me. This is a great time. Thanks for that seafood supper. I like the flavor of the sardines. And so you're just looking for low light. You're not trying to keep light in at this point. So you choose silver so it comes out, but you got a really, really soft light that creates a fantastic atmosphere. And you get it from the color of the mica.
What is the source of this mica?
Now, I used to...
Obviously, it doesn't come from Home Depot.
No, it doesn't. Now, I used to get it from a place called Van Dyke's Restorers. I don't know if they still carry that, but Clay, can you...
On the internet, you can find places in California and other places. Y'all's closest would be California. The shipping costs as much as the mic.
Yeah.
Because they have to build a box. Cover it. But just look on the internet and you'll find services. Mic. Now, some places have just small pieces. You don't want that. You want a 2 foot by 3 foot, 18 inches by 2 foot.
Mica's reason...
How do you cut it?
Does it come in different thicknesses?
I think so. Somebody asked me what thickness I used on this, and I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know how to... Yeah, it's the same thickness as the stuff that's the amber going around. And if you measure it, please tell me what it is, because people have asked, and I have no idea. Huh? It is thicker, yeah. And, yeah.
25,000 or 30,000, something like that.
That mica, then, what's the temperature in it? 'Cause we used to see old stoves with mica in them instead of... Pretty high. Instead of, glass. They used to actually build like your old potbelly stoves, and they used to put the mica in.
Okay, I think maybe I'm following what you say, I think. But sometimes my wife came up to me one day and I told her, I said, listen, please come in here and look at me when you talk to me. And she said, Ernie, you remind me of this joke I heard the other day. This is my wife telling me this. I guess she's been with me too long now. But she said there were 3 guys sitting on a bench. And the first guy said, it sure is windy. The next guy said, no, it's Thursday. And the third guy on the bench said, me too, let's go get a beer. So she said I was like those three guys, okay? So I do know that a lot of the old pot-bellied stoves had really pretty thick mica as windows in them, and
I'm pretty sure those were natural sheets. They weren't refabbed with
Yeah.
shellac and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
yeah,
Lacquer wouldn't stand up to the.
yeah. And I don't know. I think this is right. I don't know how to address that.
This, you know, the sheets on them, you can peel them.
Yeah, right.
You can peel the mica apart.
Now, if you take those sheets and you bend them, you'll see flakes popping out. Now, I know that Yellen did a lot of chandeliers that were round, and he backed that chandelier with the pierced work with mica. Well, how did he bend that without all the cracking? I know how he did it. He took 2 sheets of 18 gauge and he rolled them with the inside diameter of that outside rim, okay, the work that was done on. He had 2 sheets. And then he would take the mica and cut it to the strip size. Then he would sandwich that mica in between
Break time when you finish.
okay. He would sandwich that mica right here in between. Then he would put it in a big oven at around 225 degrees. Leave it there for an hour. The shellac or whatever the mastic was that bonded all the mineral together, it began to get solidified again. After an hour, it rebonded. You take it out, let it cool, and you've got a beautiful sheet that's curved just like the outside of the pierced work that you want. It lays in, no cracks. That's how he did it.
What do you use for a mold release on it?
The what now?
What do you use for a mold release to keep it from sticking to the forms?
Pam. Or some kind of vegetable oil.
Why did you choose mica versus stained glass of some sort? Something else?
It was lighter.
Okay.
It was lighter, and it was an old material that was used in Europe. Mica was used in Europe. And it was just,
It's flexible and it's not brittle.
no.
It doesn't break.
It's just an old material. Glass, stained glass is going to break. It's going to be very brittle. It's going to be very fragile. Mica is not that fragile. And so it's an old material that's been used for years and years, way back. So that's what I try to do. I could have put stained glass in here, but originally back in the 30s and 20s, Yellen exclusively used mica.
Now, how do you attach the mica to your metalwork?
Great question. Fabulous question. When I did this, I didn't exactly know what I was doing, and I don't mind admitting that. I had nothing to go by and nobody to talk to. A man on an island with a monkey. And you see these little tabs? They are cut out of strips of steel of 18 gauge. I should have used copper, but I didn't know any better. So I used 18 gauge steel. And then there's a rivet that goes from the outside to the inside, and the rivet is pinned down here, which locks the tab onto the mica and the metal. And that's the way and guess what? By accident, I found out that's the way Yellen did it. Except he used copper instead of steel. All I did was complicate my life trying to use steel. That's all I did was just complicate it. But that's...
Where are the matting tools?
That's how it was done. In the 1920s and 1930s. That's the way, exactly the way it was done.
James, behind you. Behind you, James.
And somebody might say, well, this is not really smooth work and it looks a little bit ragged and all that. Listen, it wasn't produced in China. This was done by hand, okay? In Mississippi, it's supposed to look like, you know, some of that ragged stuff in the deep south.
All this is, with a bonding agent, that is a man-made mica.
That's man-made mica.
Applied to
Yeah.
a man-made surface, where
Right.
original mica was mined and it actually is.
Yeah.
And it cannot be bent like that, can it?
Yeah.
No, it'll bend a little bit.
Now, I will tell you,
Give to it, but not flat.
I'll tell you, there's, the more I begin to understand, the more I find out I don't know. And the older I get, the more inadequate I feel in terms of knowledge. And I'm serious when I say that. And I think that
God bless you, man.
Great time.
I'll get to that after the break. Y'all want to take a break for